My name is Julian Cross. I am 34 years old. For the past 10 years, my family has believed I am a failure. They have believed I am drifting through life, unable to hold down a job, incapable of building anything meaningful. They have believed I am a disappointment, the son who never lived up to his potential, the brother who couldn't get his act together, the black sheep who refused to follow the path they had carefully laid out for him. They were wrong. So spectacularly wrong that when I finally revealed the truth, the silence around that Christmas dinner table was louder than any accusation they had ever thrown at me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that Christmas dinner mattered so much, you need to go back 10 years. To the moment I walked away from everything they thought I should be and started building something entirely my own. To the moment I decided that their approval wasn't worth the price of my soul. To the moment I chose myself over their expectations. To the moment I finally understood that the only person I needed to prove anything to was myself. I grew up in a family that valued success above almost everything else. My father, Richard, is a corporate attorney. He spent 40 years climbing the ladder at one of the most prestigious firms in the city. He is the kind of man who measures his worth in billable hours, corner offices, and the respect of his peers. He is the kind of man who never quite understood why his youngest son didn't want to follow in his footsteps. He is the kind of man who believes that the only path to a meaningful life is through a corner office and a six-figure salary. He worked his way up from nothing, and he expected his children to do the same. He used to tell us, the only thing that matters in this world is what you achieve. Nobody cares about your excuses. They only care about your results. My mother, Patricia, is a real estate developer. She is sharp, ambitious, and relentless. She built her career from nothing, starting as a junior broker and working her way up to owning her own development firm. She is the kind of woman who can spot a good investment from a mile away and who has never forgiven me for not being one. She is the kind of woman who measures worth in square footage and profit margins. She has an eye for detail and a mind for numbers, and she has never understood why I didn't inherit her talent for business. She used to tell me, Julian, you have so much potential. Why are you wasting it on things that don't matter? My older brother, Marcus, is a surgeon. He is brilliant, driven, and exhausting. He graduated at the top of his medical school class, completed a prestigious residency, and now works at one of the best hospitals in the country. He is the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose achievements were celebrated while mine were dismissed. He is the kind of man who believes that if you aren't saving lives, you aren't really doing anything important. He has always looked at me with a mixture of pity and disdain, as if my choices were a personal affront to his success. He used to say, Julian, you're smarter than this. Why are you settling for less? My younger sister Alison is a partner at a law firm. She is sharp, strategic, and fiercely competitive. She has been on the fast track since she graduated from law school, and she has never once doubted that she was on the right path. She is everything my parents ever wanted in a child, ambitious, successful, and completely aligned with their values. She is the kind of woman who believes that success is measured in billable hours and courtroom victories. She has always been my mother's favorite, the daughter who followed in her footsteps and made her proud. She used to tell me, Julian, you could be so much more, why don't you try harder? And then there was me. I was the outlier. I was the one who didn't fit the mold. I studied art history in college, which my parents considered a waste of time. I took a job at a small gallery after graduation, which my brother considered beneath me. I dated a woman who worked at a coffee shop, which my sister considered embarrassing. I was the one who was always asked, when are you going to get a real job? At every family gathering. The one who was told, you have so much potential, why are you wasting it? The one who was pitied, patronized, and quietly dismissed. I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself. I just smiled and nodded and let them believe whatever they wanted to believe, because I had a plan. A plan that was going to take time, patience, and a lot of hard work. A plan that they would never understand until it was too late for them to claim any credit. I used to lie awake at night, thinking about what they would say if they knew the truth. I imagined their faces, their shock, their disbelief. I imagined the moment when they would finally have to admit that they had been wrong about me. That image kept me going through the hardest times. That image was my fuel. That image was my motivation. The plan started with a small inheritance from my grandmother. It wasn't much, just $20,000, but it was enough. Enough to give me the freedom to take a risk that my family would have called foolish. I used it to buy a rundown commercial building in a neighborhood that everyone else had written off. The building was cheap, neglected, and full of potential. I saw what no one else could see. I saw a future. I spent the next 3 years living in a tiny studio apartment above the building's storefront, surviving on ramen and coffee, working 18-hour days to renovate the space with my own hands. I learned how to lay tile, install drywall, wire electrical systems, and plumb bathrooms. I learned how to negotiate with suppliers, how to market a space, how to build relationships with tenants. I learned how to be a developer, a landlord, a businessman. I learned how to be someone my family would never recognize. There were nights I wanted to give up. There were nights I sat on the floor of that empty building, surrounded by tools and debris, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. There were nights I questioned everything, my choices, my abilities, my sanity. But every morning I got up and kept going, because I had something to prove, not to them, to myself. I remember one night in particular. It was winter and the building had no heat. I was sitting on a 5-gallon bucket, eating cold soup from a can, staring at the bare walls around me. I was exhausted, my hands were raw from work, and I had no idea if any of it would pay off. For a moment I seriously considered giving up. I could have called my father, asked for help, gone back to the life they wanted for me, but something stopped me. A voice in my head, maybe my grandmother's voice, said, "You didn't come this far to quit now." I finished my soup, picked up my tools, and kept working. The building had been abandoned for nearly a decade. The roof leaked, the windows were broken, and the interior was a mess of debris and decay. But I could see the bones of something beautiful. I could see the high ceilings, the exposed brick, the original hardwood floors waiting to be restored. I could see the potential that everyone else had missed. I started with the roof. I spent 2 weeks patching holes and replacing damaged shingles. It was grueling work, especially in the winter, but it was necessary. If the roof wasn't fixed, nothing else mattered. Then I moved on to the windows, replacing the broken glass and repairing the frames. Then I started on the interior, clearing out the debris, stripping away the decay, revealing the beauty underneath. I taught myself everything. I read books, watched videos, asked questions of anyone who would talk to me. I learned how to run electrical lines, how to install plumbing, how to hang drywall. I learned how to refinish floors, how to paint walls, how to install light fixtures. I learned how to be a contractor, a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. I learned how to do it all. When I finally opened the building to tenants, it was a modest success. Nothing spectacular, nothing that would have impressed my family. But it was a start, and I built on that start, slowly, patiently, year after year. I bought another building, then another. I partnered with a developer on a mixed-use project. I started a small property management company. I reinvested every penny of profit back into the business, always expanding, always growing. The years passed in a blur of hard work and quiet satisfaction. I missed family dinners because I was working. I missed holidays because I was renovating. I missed birthdays because I was negotiating deals. I told myself it was worth it. I told myself that one day they would understand. One day they would see. There were moments of doubt. There were moments when I wondered if I was doing the right thing. There were moments when I felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on me, making me question everything. But I kept going. I kept building. I kept believing in myself even when no one else did. I remember the day I bought my second building. It was a smaller property, a former retail space that had been empty for years. It wasn't as grand as my first project, but it was another step forward. I remember standing in the empty space, looking at the peeling paint and the cracked floors and feeling a sense of excitement. I was building something. I was creating something. I was making a difference. And then there was the third building and the fourth and the fifth. Each one was a challenge. Each one was a learning experience. Each one brought me closer to my goal. I built a team around me, contractors, architects, property managers, people who believed in my vision and wanted to be part of it. I built relationships with tenants, with suppliers, with investors. I built a reputation as someone who could be trusted, someone who delivered on his promises. 10 years later, I owned a portfolio of commercial properties worth over $8 million. I had a staff of 12. I had a reputation as one of the most successful developers in the city. I had a life that my family would have called extraordinary if they had ever bothered to ask, but they never asked. They never asked because they had written me off years ago. They had decided I was a failure, and they had never bothered to update their assessment. They had no idea that the building where we were having Christmas dinner, the beautiful, restored, historic building that my sister had booked for the family gathering, was mine. The Christmas dinner was held at the Carrington, a historic building in the heart of the city that had been converted into an event space. It was the kind of place my family loved, elegant, expensive, exclusive. The kind of place that announced to the world that you had arrived. The kind of place that made you feel like you were someone important simply by walking through the doors. I arrived early, as I always did. I wanted to see the space before everyone else got there. I wanted to walk through the rooms, to appreciate the craftsmanship, to remember how it had looked when I first bought it, abandoned, decaying, forgotten. I had spent 6 months overseeing the renovation, working alongside the architects and contractors to make sure every detail was perfect. I had chosen the light fixtures, the wallpaper, the marble for the bathrooms. I had poured my heart into this building, and now I was going to watch my family celebrate Christmas in it without having any idea who had made it possible. The lobby was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, casting warm light across the polished marble floors. The walls were adorned with original artwork, carefully curated to complement the historic architecture. The furniture was elegant and comfortable, inviting guests to sit and stay a while. Every detail had been carefully considered, every decision made with intention. This was my vision brought to life. I walked through the rooms slowly, touching the walls, the banisters, the fixtures. I remembered what it had looked like when I first bought it, the crumbling plaster, the broken windows, the smell of decay. I remembered the long nights and the hard work, and I felt a surge of pride that I had done this. I had taken something broken and made it beautiful. The main dining room was even more spectacular. The table was set with fine china, crystal glassware and silver cutlery. Fresh flowers adorned the centerpiece, their fragrance filling the air. The walls were lined with historic photographs, telling the story of the building's long and storied past. I had made sure that the renovation honored that history, preserving what was beautiful while adding what was necessary. My mother was the first to arrive. She swept into the room in a designer coat, her hair perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless. She kissed my cheek absently and immediately began scanning the room, making mental notes about the decor. "Julian," she said, not really looking at me, "I'm so glad you could make it. I was worried you wouldn't come." "Wouldn't I come?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Well, you know, you've been so busy lately with your little projects." She said little projects, the way you might say hobby or phase. She had no idea that my little projects were worth millions. "I wouldn't miss it," I said. "This is a beautiful space." "Isn't it?" she said, finally looking at me with something like approval. "Alison booked it. She has such good taste. I'm so proud of her." I smiled and said nothing. I didn't tell her that Alison had booked the space through my company, that she had paid a discounted rate because the manager owed me a favor. I didn't tell her that I had approved every detail of the rental myself. I didn't tell her that the beautiful space she was admiring was mine. My father arrived next, followed by my brother and his wife, then my sister and her husband. The family gathered around a long table set with fine china and crystal. The conversation flowed easily, the way it always did. They talked about work, about their successes, about the things that mattered to them. They talked about me as if I weren't there. "Julian," my father said, raising his glass of wine. "You still working at that little gallery?" "I left the gallery a few years ago," I said. "Oh, what are you doing now?" "Property management," I said, keeping it vague. "Property management," he repeated as if tasting the words. "Is that a real job? It pays the bills." "Barely, I imagine," my mother said with a sympathetic smile. "You know, Julian, if you ever need help getting a proper job, your brother could put in a word for you. He knows everyone in the medical field." "I'm fine, Mom." "I'm doing well." "Well," she said, patting my hand condescendingly, "you've always been a dreamer. I'm sure you'll figure it out eventually." I smiled and said nothing. I didn't tell her that I was currently employing 12 people, that my net worth was close to $9 million, that the building we were sitting in was mine. I didn't tell her that I had been the one who made this evening possible, that without me, they would be celebrating in a cheap banquet hall instead of this magnificent space. My brother leaned in. "Julian, I heard you're still seeing that coffee shop girl. When are you going to find someone appropriate?" "Her name is Sarah," I said, "and she's a lawyer now." "A lawyer, really?" My sister raised an eyebrow. "Where does she practice?" "At a firm downtown. She's a partner." Table went quiet for a moment, then my mother laughed. "A partner at her age? That's impressive. How did you meet someone like that?" "Through work," I said. "She handled a commercial transaction for me." "Another little project?" my brother asked, smirking. "Something like that," I said. The dinner progressed through its courses. The food was exquisite, the wine flowed freely, and the conversation grew louder and more animated. My family was in their element, performing their roles with practiced ease. My father held court at the head of the table, regaling everyone with stories from his legal career. My mother discussed the latest real estate developments with studied authority. My brother talked about a complicated surgery he had performed, his voice filled with pride. My sister recounted a recent courtroom victory with obvious satisfaction. I listened and smiled and said little. I had learned over the years that my contributions to these conversations were neither expected nor welcome. I was there to be a witness, not a participant. I was there to be a reminder of what they were not, but something was different this time. Something had shifted inside me. I was tired of being invisible. I was tired of being dismissed. I was tired of pretending that their opinions didn't matter when they clearly did. And I was ready to show them who I really was. The real turning point came during dessert. My mother, who had been drinking wine steadily throughout the evening, turned to me with a look of exaggerated sympathy. Julian, she said, her voice loud enough for the whole table to hear. When are you going to settle down? You're not getting any younger. All your cousins are married, your brother has a beautiful family, your sister is engaged, why can't you find a nice girl? Maybe I'm not ready, I said. Ready, you're 34, what are you waiting for? A sign from God, the table laughed, my brother's wife snickered, my sister smiled politely, I smiled too but it didn't reach my eyes. Actually, I've been seeing someone, I said, the table went quiet, everyone turned to look at me. Really? My mother said, her voice dripping with skepticism. Who is she? Her name is Sarah. What does she do? She's a lawyer. A lawyer, my father raised an eyebrow. Where did she go to school? She's a partner at a firm downtown, I said, my mother's eyes widened. A partner at her age, that's impressive. How did you meet someone like that? We met through work, I said. She was handling a commercial transaction for me. Commercial transaction, my brother said, frowning. What kind of commercial transaction? I could feel the truth building inside me like a wave ready to break. I had been holding it back for so long, years of silence, years of pretending, years of letting them believe I was a failure. And now, sitting at this table, surrounded by their judgment and their condescension, I couldn't hold it in any longer. Building we're in, I said. Sarah handled the purchase and renovation for me. Table went very, very quiet. What do you mean? My father said slowly, you're saying you own this building? Yes, I said, I own it. I bought it 5 years ago when it was abandoned and falling apart. I renovated it myself. I turned it into what you see today. That's impossible, my mother said, her face pale. You couldn't afford something like this. Done more than you think, I said. I've been building a business for 10 years. I own a portfolio of commercial properties worth over $8 million. I have a staff of 12. I've renovated buildings all over the city. And this, I gestured around the room, this is just one of them. Silence, complete, absolute silence. Even the waiters who had been refilling glasses stopped moving. Everyone was staring at me with expressions ranging from disbelief to shock to something that looked almost like fear. Julian, my sister said finally, are you serious? I'm completely serious, I said. I never told you because you never asked. You decided years ago that I was a failure, and you never bothered to update your as.